Well, hey fans, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Spoilers, and today we're talking spoilers for Loki Season 2. So I know it has been a long time since Loki Season 2 came out, but I got backed up on a lot of stuff and I'm finally able to get to this. Loki Season 1 and 2 are my favorite shows on Disney+. Great acting all around. Tom Hiddleston is great as Loki. Sophia Di Martino is great as Sylvie. Jonathan Majors, who is sadly currently no longer a part of the MCU after those just horrible things that he was accused of, that when you see the footage, I don't believe he did any of it, but unfortunately he got found guilty of lesser charges that are basically nothing, and the people at Marvel Studios and Disney decided to let him go. He's phenomenal as He Who Remains and as Victor Timely, and I wish we were getting him back in the MCU. Like I said, at this time, he is currently fired. He is not returning. They will keep Kang and Victor Timely and He Who Remains potentially, all of those variants, they will stay around, but they'll be portrayed by a new actor, unfortunately. But yeah, like I said, he was great. So this season picks up right where season 1 left off, and you got Loki. He's in a different form of the TVA where we see a Kang variant is in charge. There's statues of him. There are no timekeepers. And he meets a young version of, not really young, but just an earlier version of Hunter B-15 and Mobius, and they don't know who he is, and he's trying to explain to them what's going on. Then he zips back to the future within the TVA, which they don't really explain. Like, time slipping in the TVA is supposed to be impossible, yet somehow he is doing it because TVA exists outside of time, so how can you time slip? That's still like a little loophole. But of course, we get to the end, and you find out this has all been He Who Remains' plan. He's still within He Who Remains' game. So at the end of the last season, Sylvie kills He Who Remains, and he says, "See you soon," which he's aiming that directly at Loki. He's like, "I'll see you soon," because he triggered this whole journey for Loki to go on to realize his potential, so to speak. And I'm not going to skip to the end just to pretty much get to where the series, how it progresses. Loki really wants to save the TVA. He wants to save all of the timelines, but he has to kind of get the gang back together. So he figures out how to stabilize himself by talking to Mobius, who takes him down to Ouroboros, also known as Obi, and they stabilize his time slipping somewhat. So he's able to try and find, jumps to other universes, try to find people to bring him back, but they are in their normal timeline, so they don't know what's going on. And of course, eventually he finds Sylvie, and Sylvie's just working at McDonald's. She doesn't want to do anything, and he's like, "Sylvie, if you don't come back and help the universe, everything is going to, fall apart." So eventually, after seeing her universe fall apart, she decides to join in and help him recruit. And they look, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, because Renslayer and Miss Minutes, they go find a young Victor Timely, and they slip him the book for the TVA handbook. They slip that book into his room. He's like a candle maker or whatever. So he finds this, and of course he grows up to be the Victor Timely in an alternate timeline. By slipping Victor Timely this book, they create an alternate timeline where Victor becomes this inventor, but since he's in the 1800s, he's not, he doesn't have the stuff around him to actually make these inventions that he wants to build work. He's, in too early of a time period. So here's the fun thing about this. So Nathaniel Richards from like the 31st century is supposed to be Kang Prime. He's supposed to be the original, and all the other Kangs came from him. What this shows us, because you can see when Renslayer and Miss Minutes they go to the sacred timeline, and that's where they drop the book off. So original Kang is Victor Timely in the main MCU. So He Who Remains, who at this point I'm pretty sure He Who Remains is the original Nathaniel Richards from the 31st century, he knew that he was a variant, that he's not the original, even though he's the one who discovered multiple universes that he could go and visit and spread like this information with the rest of versions of himself. He, and I'm pretty sure all the other ones, knew we're not the original, it's actually this normal guy from the past. How do we come about? One of us has to give that normal guy a version of what we created, which is the TVA. That creates another variant of himself, and then they all, I think, line up from there. So the Victor Timely we see is not actually from the sacred timeline. He's from a timeline created by Renslayer and Miss Minutes. So they recruit him, and the weirdest thing, and I kind of enjoy, is that Miss Minutes has a crush on him because she also has a crush on He Who Remains, the original Kang that we saw in the first season, and she's also a little upset, and she's taken all of her frustrations out on this Victor Timely version because she's like, out of all this time, I've helped you, I've rebooted the TVA, I've done all these things, but you've never created a body for me so we can actually be together. Which, this is Marvel, this is the MCU, he has technology from different timelines and all this stuff. He could have easily had created her a body, but I think there's something about he knows how dangerous she is as AI. And Miss Minutes is so creepy in the second season, and Tara Strong does a great job performing that whole aspect of the character. But they get him, and there's all these shenanigans. Jonathan Majors, once again, I'm not going to stop praising how great of an actor this guy is. He portrays him not how I expected either. He's like a stuttering, smart guy, but he's a little bit timid. He's not like this smart governor of a future town that he created like he is in the comics. A totally different personality. And they recruit him, and they use his intelligence with OBE to create some kind of device that is supposed to stabilize the sacred timeline that they're trying to reboot. And it leads up to this cliffhanger, which I said in my review is the best cliffhanger ever, where Victor Timely runs out and he's like, it's time to be brave. And he goes out and he's spaghettified immediately. Spaghettified immediately, and the timeline blows up, and that's where we are left. That could have been a season finale. If they could have stretched out what happened between those first 3 episodes into a whole season, and we got a season 3, that would have been amazing. It would have kept us on the edge of our seats for I don't know how long. But when we come back, Loki is somehow still alive because of his time slipping. He can jump to before that happened, while I think not only Loki, Sylvie has the device, so she can control her time slipping as well. So she's like, it's over, we lost, there's no defeating it. So Loki's basically like, I'll figure this out. So he goes to all these earlier points to try and figure out how to save it. And he finds a original version of OB in the his main timeline and gives him the TVA handbook. And then like 15 years later, he creates like this rudimentary like timekeeper door or whatever to find Loki, and they try to get it to work. So every time Loki gets to people, he keeps trying to get it to work. He's like, it's not working. What do we do? And he's like, I'll figure it out. And he's like, how long would it take me to know what you know? And he's like, centuries. And then you see a look on Loki's face, and it just cuts to like centuries later. So Loki keeps running this same scenario for hundreds of years to try and save the timeline. And he patches everything. He makes everything go as smoothly as possible so that Victor Timely will not die immediately when he walks out of that gate. And it's a great scene, just him going over it and going over it and going over it. And somehow they just still lose. He can't understand why they're still losing if he's done everything right. So in the end, he actually goes back to He Who Remains. And this is another great scene in the film. You got Tom Hiddleston talking to Jonathan Majors again about, why is he not succeeding? He's like, it's a scaling problem, because once the main timeline explodes, he's created a failsafe to where it'll wrap everything back up into the sacred timeline, and it'll start over, and this is where we'll be. Or you have the multiverse. You have infinite timelines, and you can't account for infinite with the thing they were trying to do. So that's why he's like, there can only be the very few timelines that I allow to exist. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck with the multiverse. And that's a lot of me you have to deal with. And that's his gambit. He's like, look, there's going to be a lot of me to deal with. Or, you can take charge. So in the last season, and I think he was willing to do this, He Who Remains was basically like, I'm tired of doing this. I've done this forever. And you can tell he's done this reboot thing, probably with other Lokis, but also with whoever else has made it this far. And he's like, I'm tired of doing all this. I'm done. Even if she kills me and the multiverse happens, I will be reincarnated in one of those multiverses. So he wanted both of them to do it. Sylvie didn't want to do it. Sylvie kills him. And then he basically lets Loki know, look, somebody has to sit here. So it's either going to be me, and I don't want to do it, or it's going to be you. Because clearly she doesn't want to do it. So Loki goes back and does it again. Doesn't work. And he realizes at that moment, he's like, I have to sit on the throne. So he goes out, and seeing as he who remains is actually a human who mastered time, Loki is an Asgardian who has mastered time. So, he can handle it slightly better because of his Asgardian physiology. They age slower. They have, magical abilities, stuff like that. So he goes out and he uses his Asgardian magic to give the timelines a boost, basically keep them, because, if they keep intersecting, eventually they're going to all die. And that was what Kang the Conqueror saw, that his counterparts were allowing all these timelines to happen. And he saw the multiverse. He's like, dude, it's dying. We can't keep doing this. I got to prune some of these universes and control it. And which is why I think he's coming back, even if it's not by Jonathan Majors. We'll see him again, hopefully. Because they are keeping Kang. But Loki uses his Asgardian magic, keeps these timelines alive enough, and he sits on the throne at the end of time. And he recreates the multiverse, which he's allowing to happen as it looks like the Yggdrasil tree. And that's what is going on. So he's stuck. He can't be with Sylvie. He can't do any of these things. He has to sit at the end of time unless he wants to give that up for, a He Who Remains or a Kang or somebody like that to take the throne, which, again, he doesn't want that either. So he's taking on that burden, which I think was a great ending for the character in terms of this show for now, because I'm pretty sure he'll be back in Secret Wars. I'm pretty sure he won't sit on that throne forever. I'm pretty sure he will see Thor again. He kind of has to. And that leads into, an issue I have with the show. We don't see Loki interact with any of his family members or other Asgardians this season. Like, he talks about, he wants his friends back. And it's all these TVA people that he really only knew for however long he was there in the previous season. And I know it's a money thing, and Chris Hemsworth is busy and all of that stuff, but you could have easily, made him disguise himself as a younger version where he goes and sees like a younger version of his brother, where you get a nobody actor to play the role, just put on the Thor armor. He could have talked to her. I'm pretty sure you could have gotten, I forget the lady who plays his mother. That would have been a great scene for him, since he has all this infinite time travel powers, to go and visit his mom, his dad, his brother, reconcile with the Jotuns, do all this stuff, knowing eventually he has to go here at the end. And I think that is the missed opportunity of this show, which I think is great. I think the show is great, but I think that is a missed opportunity of the show, is not having him interact with people we've seen him interact with in previous movies, namely his family members. So I thought everything about this season, save for that part about him not interacting with his family members, was pretty good. It's the best show done for the MCU. And I hope we get a third season. I hope in this, rebranding, recollecting, and changing the way things are going, that they do a third season of Loki to tie into Secret Wars and whatever Avengers the Kang Dynasty becomes. So, I think those are all of my thoughts on how this season went overall. Remember, you can watch the full review for Loki on YouTube and the website, flipfrogllc.com/flixfrog. Remember, you can watch us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. And please, pretty please, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Facebook page, anything and everything Flipfrog, Flixfrog, Flipfrog Books. Make sure that you subscribe. My next Let's Talk Spoilers is probably going to be Invincible Season 2 Part 2. I'm going to jump back to that and finish it off before I jump back to the other stuff that I have to catch up on last year. So yeah, Invincible Season 2 Part 2 will be my next one. And until next time, I'll be seeing you.